that is showing on the screen. You'll be calling us on that number, then we are going to have a conversation. You can even text the same number or WhatsApp on the same number. With that being said, let me just introduce my guest, who is no other than Mr. Bartholomew Phiri, who happens to be a political analyst. He's the one I'm going to be having the discussion with here in the studio. Mr. Phiri, good afternoon, sorry, and welcome to the program.
Good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to our listeners this afternoon. It's my pleasure being hosted here.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure hosting you as well. First things first, Mr. Phiri, you as a political analyst, before we even get to the main conversation, I would love to get it from you. What is the importance of having a formidable opposition to the nation?
All right, thank you so much. I think it's important to understand the role of an opposition in a nation.
Yes.
The opposition is simply there to question, to challenge, and to criticize the government of the day. As people always say, that the opposition are there to offer checks and balances.
Exactly.
So meaning that whatever the opposition are doing, they are doing it for the good of the Zambian people. Meaning that they are the next government, or the government in waiting. Meaning that whatever they are doing is simply there for the interest of the country. I think it's very much important for the opposition to unite, because we are talking about governance, we are talking about governing a nation, we are talking about bringing in ideas, different ideas on the table to ensure that we bring about development and govern our people very well.
Okay. Having said that, looking at the importance of the opposition, what are some of the challenges that you think the opposition is facing currently when it comes to heading towards unity?
Right. I think one of the most challenge that the opposition are facing is integrity and credibility.
Okay.
You know, I always tell people that you do not become a leader because of a position. You do not become a leader because of money, or maybe you've been recognized because you've been given a position and then you want to call yourself a leader. You are called a leader even before you are given position. You are called a leader even before you've got anything. In other words, I'm trying to say recognition, money, and position comes later. That is after, when you lead, because people are recognized because they have taken a step further. They have simply practiced leadership, and then you are able to see that there's leadership in this particular person. So one thing that the opposition of today, we are lacking, or they are lacking, is simply credibility. As you can see, Zambians do not know who to trust. They are not trustworthy. Why? Because of fake promises, because of a lot of self-ambitions that are happening. Hence, Zambians feel like somebody is just vying for a public office for personal gain. Hence, there's no that credibility. And also, truth is that the integrity of most opposition leaders is questionable.
Okay.
When we look at these fragmentations that are happening, it's because of lack of integrity. Okay. A person has to remain true to their principles and values. That shows qualityness of a leader. But when you lack that, then it means we've got compromised leaders. Hence, it is very challenging to have leaders coming together, uniting for a common good.
Okay. Talking about leaders coming together and uniting for a common goal, one other thing, one other aspect that comes out prominent is the issue to do with ideologies among these other challenges that you've talked about. Now, what advice would you give to these political parties or these opposition political groupings in relation to them overcoming all these hurdles and make sure that they get to prioritize unity that is, at the end of the day, going to help sustain the nation, as well as making sure that we are moving in the right direction in terms of political will?
All right. So talking about the difference in ideologies, I think life is all about debates. You don't expect to bring ideas on the table and everyone to agree with you. You expect some people to disagree with you. Hence, upon disagreements, then you shape one another and get to understand what a particular person really stands on. So when you talk about ideologies, I think we've got different economic systems that are used in the world. We've got capitalism, we've got socialism, imperialism, meaning that capitalism has now advanced to imperialism stage, and also communism, where socialism now advances to communism. So when you look at all these economic systems, they differ in terms of ideologies and the approach itself. But at the end of the day, it's imperative, I think, to sit down and try to think through and see through automatically. Let me just say, trying to get an understanding to say, this approach, how does it advance a certain goal? For instance, like when we talk about education sector, maybe one of the prominent questions that would be raised by citizens and others is that how are the policies of socialism approaching the education sector? How are the policies of capitalism approaching the education sector? But at the end of it all, you realize that most people will talk about the same thing, but different in how they approach. Okay, but what lacks there is that are they truly determined to deliver on what their policy or maybe their manifesto is simply talking about? So those differences, I think, they should not take us to a stage where we do not agree in anything because we are using different ideologies. I think ideologies, these are just ideas. At the end of the day, the most important thing is to how do you achieve that idea, or how do you turn that idea now into practical thing? Because my ideas cannot simply be implemented without advisors, or maybe without everyone on.
Maybe that's where the problem comes in, Mr. Phiri. A lot of people get to complain that it's very hard to advise certain figures in these political parties because they think that when they have the financial muscle, when they have the influence, then they are immune to advise. What danger does that pose to our democratic dispensation as a country?
I think first thing first, allow me to say this. It is very foolish to think that because you have the financial muscle, you have the intellectual capacity and everything, then you are immune to advise or you are above everyone. It is very foolish to think like that. And that is lack of leadership, because leaders are bound to listen from their people. When people are talking, leaders should listen. And a good leader is one leader that listens to what people are saying. And then when the people say, you take into consideration their submissions. Bringing everything together with your own. I'm a leader in the church. And one thing that we've always been taught is that when you're conducting, for instance, like a Bible study, you bring up a question to the audience, and the audience must fully participate. On reasons that there might be areas where you don't fully understand well, even you as a teacher. But at the end of the day, you are there teaching one another because nobody understands the Bible fully. So that's one good example of who a good leader is. So even when it comes to governance, a leader must listen, because I cannot be a president, I cannot be a member of parliament, I cannot be a councillor, I cannot be a mayor who does not give access to people to approach me, advise me, and tell me how they think certain things could be achieved. So if I reach to that stage, then it means I'm not interested in national interest. The only interest there, it means it's my personal ambition. So this is where the problem is, even with the